Donald Trump has just issued an executive order temporarily halting admission of refugees, but he promises priority for Christians. Now, we all know that Donald Trump, while on the campaign trail, had stated that he wanted to ban all Muslims from entering the country. But he quickly, well, not so quickly, he backed off of trying to target Muslims because there are 1.5 billion Muslims in the world, and a bunch of them are living in countries that we are allied with. So, in order to try to get around that, Mr. Trump today issued an executive order banning immigration or travel from 6 countries. Those 6 countries are Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. And the reason that he designated these 6 countries were because of quote-unquote terrorist activity. Funny thing about it, he didn't ban the countries that have major terrorist activity. He didn't ban the United Kingdom that has a bunch of terrorist activity. He didn't ban Nigeria that has a bunch of terrorist activity. He didn't ban Afghanistan, which has terrorist activity. He didn't ban Chechnya, which has terrorist activity, or Pakistan. He also didn't ban the Netherlands or France. Now, why did I pick all but the last 2 to say that they should have been banned as well? The reason I picked those countries is because all of the terrorist activity in the United States has been performed by one of those first 5 countries or citizens that of those countries that either became citizens of the United States or had cleared through immigration from those countries. If you recall the San Bernardino killing, that was from a U.S. citizen who had originally come from one of those 5 countries. The nightclub massacre also was perpetrated by a citizen of one of those first 5 countries. We've also discovered and foiled plots from Pakistani Americans and Afghan Americans. So why, instead of just banning those 6 countries, how come he didn't put the rest of those countries on the list? If you recall, 9/11 was perpetrated by people from I believe it was Saudi Arabia and Egypt, just to name 2, but they're not on the list. Does that strike you as odd that Donald Trump is trying to protect the American people, but he's still allowing people from the countries that actually have caused hurt and harm to the citizens of this country, he's allowing people from those countries to still come in? Now, the orders are temporary, okay? There's a 120-day halt on the admission of refugees while the quote-unquote Secretary of Homeland Security reviews the process used in order to admit them, but it's still targeting people from those countries, and in particular, Syria. Most of Europe is taking in Syrian refugees, but for some reason, we don't seem to be able to do that per Mr. Trump. Now, let me read you the full article regarding this executive order. Donald Trump signed an order Friday to suspend admission of all refugees for 120 days while a new system is put in place to tighten vetting for those from predominantly Muslim countries and give preference to religious minorities. Those religious minorities are Christians living in Muslim countries. Trump said that the goal is to screen out radical Islamic terrorists and that priority for admissions would be given to Christians. We don't want them here, Trump said of terrorists in a signing ceremony at the Pentagon. We only want to admit those into our country who will support our country and love deeply our people. Okay? I suppose you need to kick out people who don't deeply love our country. People like white supremacists. People like Dylan Roof. I don't think there's any disagreement that he didn't really like black people and they are part of the country. People like the ones that blew up the federal building in Oklahoma City. They apparently don't like our country because they acted against citizens, including children. So for him to make a statement that they only want to admit people who deeply love our country, what about the citizens who don't deeply love our country? Are you going to create an executive order to get rid of them? And if you do, where are you going to send them? Because nobody's going to take them. Anyway, Donald Trump gave an interview to a, shall we call them, right-leaning broadcast network, the Christian Broadcasting Network, on Friday. And he was asked whether he would prioritize persecuted Christians in the Middle East for admissions, and he said absolutely that he would. They've been horribly treated, he said. Do you know if you were a Christian in Syria, it was impossible, at least very tough, to get into the United States? If you were a Muslim, you could come in, but if you were a Christian, it was almost impossible. The reason that was so unfair, everybody was persecuted in all fairness, but they were chopping off the heads of everybody, but more so the Christians, and I thought it was very, very unfair. That's bullshit. They were killing more Muslims than anything else. But because your priority was on the Christians, you want to make everybody think the Christians were the ones that were getting the brunt of the terrorist acts. But it was really Muslims. So if anything, you should have allowed Muslims greater access to get the hell out of Dodge and away from those guys. But with your actions, guess what you just did? You lock people into those countries. So now they're going to have a choice: die or join the Islamic terrorists. And in my opinion, most people are going to opt to live. And even more so, the fact that the United States is turning their backs on them is probably going to piss off a lot of them, and that's going to be a cause for radicalization. The order that he signed, protecting the nation from foreign terrorists entering into the United States, is possibly going to do that, but there should be an addendum to that order. It should also read, and for the creation of foreign terrorists by our actions. This is crazy. This guy does not think about the ramifications of his actions. But you know something? I don't even actually believe that he's even thought of this. To me, this smacks of Steve Bannon and his ilk as far as wanting to take America off of the world playing field. I don't know about you, but this one needs to be fought. And I believe there are groups out there that are going to file lawsuits against Donald Trump and these particular orders. Now, the good thing is Donald Trump doesn't know the difference between being a king, which he thinks he is, and being president, which he is not acting like. A king can make decrees and doesn't have to consider anybody or anything else. His word is law. A president can issue orders, but those orders are subject to the laws of this country. And if a citizen withstanding believes that those laws are unconstitutional, can challenge his executive orders via Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. And as we all know, the Supreme Court doesn't always come down on the side of the president. See Barack Obama and DACA. Donald Trump has not run any of these executive orders past the legal team in the White House. So it's been stated that most of the executive orders that he has recently signed have the ability to be challenged for constitutionality. And several of them could be declared unconstitutional and kicked out. I'm kind of hoping that this is one of them, only because the people that are refugees need help. America was always supposed to be one of the main countries in the world that help people. Now, it's also ironic that Donald Trump signed this order on Holocaust Remembrance Day. This day back in 1939, a ship with 900 German Jewish people hit the ports of America, and America turned them away. And pretty much all 900 people ended up having to go back to Germany, where they were killed. There is a website, if I'm not mistaken, called St. Louis Manifest, and it has a list of, I believe, all 900 people with their names and exactly where they were killed, and that might be something that you want to take a look at. So on a day where we remember the stain that was placed on our country by turning away the German Jews, Donald Trump is doing exactly the same thing to people that are being persecuted in the Middle East. And he's making a difference between people of one country and people of another. If anything, Saudi Arabia, which generated the worst act of terrorism on U.S. soil, should have been one of those countries. But of course, since Saudi Arabia is a major oil producer, you're not going to want to piss them off. The Netherlands, which has tons of ISIS-inspired people, you didn't ban them. France obviously has a bunch of horrific acts that took place on their soil. They weren't banned. The UK also had terrorist acts that took place on their soil. You didn't ban them. Neither did you ban Germany. So based on your own actions, it's really clear who you were targeting with these orders. And the targeting was basically brown people, people of color from the Middle East that don't share your religious beliefs. Folks, we're going to have to do something, and we got to do something quick. And people are, starting to stand up, and they're marching, but we need to take definitive action over the next 2 years, because the only way that we're going to be able to accomplish anything as far as getting rid of this turkey and the people that are supporting him, the cowardly Republicans, is to vote them out of office. But this one is a bad one. Now, there's another executive order that hasn't come to light yet. It has to do with executive orders, obviously the one on the Muslim ban I just spoke to you about, but he's also planning on ending the Dreamer program. Let me get you some information on that one. Dreamer program, ending unconstitutional executive amnesties. This order is still in draft form and has not been announced yet, but I'm going to read you basically what's going on with it. The draft is titled Ending Unconstitutional Executive Amnesties would end a major Obama program that has effectively protected more than 740,000 unauthorized immigrants from deportation since 2012. This program, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, was aimed at people who came to the U.S. when they were younger than 16 years old, who either had pursued or were pursuing education and had no felony convictions, among other conditions. It let them get temporary protection from deportation and permits to work in the U.S. But the order would end the DACA program. Now it says that work permits already issued under the program will remain valid. However, these permits are all already set to expire at some point in the next 2 years, and once they expire, they will not be renewed, according to the order. Starting very soon, a trickle of immigrants would start to lose their DACA protections, and by January 2019, barring a policy reversal or an act of Congress, all of them would expire. Even while still protected by DACA, the order says the government will not grant them advance parole. That means that should they leave the country, they would not be allowed to return. Finally, this draft order would also put the nail in the coffin of Obama's 2014 attempt to extend the program to cover a broader group of unauthorized immigrants, DAPA, which had already been blocked in the courts. All in all, if implemented, the order would roll back President Obama's most significant legacy on immigration. So the DACA people, basically, you now know exactly where he's going with this. And if I were you, I would make preparation to either leave the country or go underground if necessary. Now, there's another order that he's putting in place, limiting legal immigration. This particular executive order is titled Protecting American Jobs and Workers by Strengthening the Integrity of Foreign Worker Visa Programs. This particular order contains a variety of provisions. One that would reverse Obama's extension of the duration of optional practical work, training work visas, and a decision to allow the spouses of H-1B guest workers to also have work permits. It would kill that. Another would undo relief Obama has granted to people eligible for green cards but unable to apply for them due to what's known as the 3 and 10 year bars. Now, if you don't know what the 3 and 10 year bars is, this is what it is. If a person comes into the country, okay, and they can marry or whatever, but if they're in the country for 180 days or less, and they want to get legal, in order to get legal, they have to leave the country. But if it's discovered that they were in the country, period, for 180 days or less, they are barred from coming back into the country for 3 years. If they are in the country for more than 180 days, they're barred from re-entering the country for 10 years. Now imagine if two people got married and had some kids and then decided that they wanted to try to get the